I will now present the stage to Mr. Sven Mollekleiv, who is currently Honorary President of Norwegian Red Cross and has contributed a lot to this organization in various capacities. Please welcome him.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Thank you for inviting to this very important conference. We have to make a difference every day. I have spent almost a lifetime of engagement in disasters all over the world, in conflicts and across front lines. A lifetime of witnessing the immense human suffering caused by armed conflict. Working for the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. I've been to Syria every year since the conflict started, accepting that I was not on a peace mission, but rather trying to provide necessities for survival, safety, dignity, and hope for a tomorrow for the many civilians in desperate need. The Red Cross and the Red Crescent were born on the battlefield, as were the rules of war. The rules trying to limit the suffering by limiting the means and the methods of warfare that should be allowed even in the worst of times when war was raging. The whole idea behind the Red Cross and the rules of war is that it accepts that war exists. That way the law and the Red Cross together can provide some boundaries to the size of the suffering war causes. And that is, unfortunately, needed more than ever. Even though there have been important improvements for the global population for many years. There has been a dramatic fall in the global poverty. Hundreds of millions of people have actually been lifted out of poverty since the Millennium Goals were established in the year 2000. Global hunger is declining. Health inequality is falling. And child mortality is in rapid decline. Progress which has taken place despite a huge increase in the world's population in the same time span. More people has got access to education, to clean water. We have seen progress in the world. But the number of people affected by the armed conflict has risen since 2010. We recognize it. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, South Sudan, Somalia, Central Republic of Africa. And then we haven't even mentioned Congo, and I could continue. This is partly since many of today's conflicts are protracted, and they take place in cities where civilians suffer the most. As the Red Cross and Red Crescent, we have been given a specific mandate by the international community to provide assistance and protection. But that assistance can only be provided through presence on the ground. People meeting people, being there where it's needed. And I mentioned that I have been into Syria every year since the war started in 2011, meeting the many brave volunteers, at times risking their own lives to help others. They are present in the affected communities and crossing the front lines every day. And having access to the vulnerable and being available. And the most important, trusted. Trusted by all parties, trusted by the different groups participating in the conflicts, and trusted including those we seek to assist. That is the core of building sustainable resilience. Even in a protracted conflict, which the situation in Syria unfortunately has ended up of being. But the humanitarian situation in Syria and many other contexts in the world will continue to worsen if the world remains unable and unwilling to provide an adequate political response. And until this happens, the volunteers will continue to risk their lives to assist others. And we cannot allow their efforts to be meaningless. Sadly, from May 2016 and to today, in just 16 countries, we have registered more than 1,200 incidents of violence against healthcare facilities or personnel. Only in Syria, over friends, over volunteers in the Syria Arab Red Crescent societies, more than 70 have been killed delivering humanitarian assistance into traumatized children, into areas besieged as part of the war strategy. And they were targeted despite the fact their only agenda was to provide humanitarian services. And this is gross violations of international humanitarian law. And unfortunately, we see such violations too often in today's conflicts. Civilians targeted. Civilians denied access to health care. The targeting of aid workers should be a stark reminder of how we, more than ever, need to stand up and stand united to defend our core humanitarian values and refuse to accept that the minimum standards of humanity and solidarity established through international humanitarian law, human rights law, and refugee law can be compromised when it is considered, as we just heard, politically suitable by some. We must demand respect for these rules, and particularly when times are tough. It took the global community decades and even centuries to agree on international law that some states now wish to weaken or even abolish. We went through the Second World War before we managed to develop human rights. We have to defend them every day, everywhere. The world cannot afford the next century without the rules ensuring a minimum of humanity. The challenges are already too many. So, dear friends, the mandate and the mission of the Red Cross and Red Crescents could be perceived as rather pessimistic, because we accept that conflicts is there and that there is a huge amount of suffering, even if international humanitarian law is respected by all parties. But then I would like to end my reading from the Constitution of the Red Cross, stating the aim of our work and that peace is more than the absence of war. It is. It is a dynamic process of cooperation of all states and peoples. Cooperations founded on respect for freedom, independence, national sovereignty, equality, human rights, as well as on a fair and equitable distribution of resources to meet the needs of all people. In other words, the faith of humanity is up to you and me as individuals. That is the true power of humanity. And no one can care for everybody, but everybody can care and help somebody. We must find and fight the causes of conflicts and wars. We must do what we can to stop the wars. But every day, we must show the power of humanity, dear friends, the power of humanity together. Thank you all for caring, and good luck to all of you.